morning, everyone. Today we are going to be looking at fractions part 1. Today we're going to be covering converting fractions to decimals and percentages, ordering fractions, decimals and percentages, and expressing and simplifying fractions. First thing that we are going to look at is how to convert fractions, decimals and percentages. So as you can see from the slide, whenever we move from decimals to percentages, we multiply by 100. So we move that decimal point twice to the right, or we can look at the number after the decimal point and that would be our percentage. So 0.62 times by 100 equals 62%. To then move from percentages to decimals, we do the opposite. So we divide by 100. So 76 divided by 100, so we move that decimal point twice to the left, or we put the number after the decimal point, then becomes 0.76. Then, when we're moving from decimals to fractions, we put the decimal over 100 and then we simplify. So 0.42 would be equivalent to 42 over 100. We then simplify this by dividing it down so we cannot divide it anymore. So 42 and 100 divided by 2 would then be 21 over 50. And then finally, percentages to fractions, we put the percentage over 100 and simplify. So 15% would be 15 over 100. We would then simplify it by dividing both numbers by 5, which would leave us with 15 divided by 5 is 3 and 100 divided by 5 is 20, which would leave us with 3 over 20. So we're going to have a look now at converting the following. So 0.56 to a fraction. So we're going to put 56 over 100 as our first step. And then notice we can actually divide both by 2. So 56 divided by 2 would leave us with 28. 100 divided by 2 is 50. And then we can divide again. So 28 divided by 2 is then 14. And 50 divided by 2 is 25. So our answer would be 14 over 25. Then 65 is a decimal. So remember, we just put 0 point and then our percentage number, which is 65. And our answer is 0.65. And then 42% is a decimal. We just put our number after our 0 point and 0.42. And we've got our answers. Okay, so we're now going to have a look at how we actually change fractions to decimals and percentages with and without a calculator. So with a calculator, we divide the top by the bottom to get your decimal. So 3/4 as a decimal would be 3 divided by 4, which would give you on your calculator as 0.75. And then to transfer that into a percentage, you would then multiply the decimal by 100 to get your percentage. So 0.75 times 100 is 75%. Now, without a calculator, there are 2 methods in which you can use to do that process. So when the bottom number cannot be made 100, use the calculator method, but you'll need to use bus stop division to do so. So 3/4 is a decimal, we put the bottom number outside the bus stop. So 4 to 3, 3.00. So top as a decimal. And we say how many falls into 3? Well, we know we can't do that, so that's 0. How many falls into 30 is 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, which is 7, with 2 left over. How many falls into 24? 8, 12, 16, 20 is 5. So our answer is 0.75. However, when the bottom number can be made into 100, you times the bottom by a number to make it to 100 and times the top number by the same amount, and then your top number is the percentage. So let me explain that to you. Say we have the fraction 3/5. This bottom number can be made into 100 by multiplying it by 20. So because we've times 5 by 20 to get our bottom number 100, we do the same to the top. So 3 times 20 is 60. So then our fraction now reads 60 over 100, which is equivalent to 60%. So you always focus on what can you get that bottom number and can it be made into 100? And if it can, you then need to use this method above. Okay, so we're going to have a look at these. So convert the following 2/5 as a decimal percentage. Use the bus stop method. So remember, our bottom goes outside and our top goes inside as a decimal. So how many 5s into 2 is 0? We carry the 2 over. How many 5s into 20 is 4? How many 5s into 0? 0. So our decimal is 0.40 or 0.4. And as a percentage, we times it by 100, which then gives us 40%. Okay, we're going to do the same now. Bottom. So 3/15. So 15ths go as our bottom. 3 as a decimal inside. How many 15s in 3? It can't go, so we must carry the 3 over. How many 15s in 30? 15/30 is 2. How many 15s in 0? 0. So our decimal is 0.2. Times it by 100 to get our percentage, and it is 20%. Okay, the next two we can then convert because they are numbers that we can easily turn to 100. So watch how we do these. So we've got 12 over 50. Now the easiest way to do it is put equals and then 100. And then say to yourself, how do I get from 50 to 100? So 50 times by 2 makes 100. And now I have to do the same to 12. So I'm now timesing 12 by 2 or doubling it, which is 24. And then the number at the top is your percentage. So it is 24%. Okay, I'm going to show you that again. So 6 into 6 25ths. So we've got 6 and 25 equals bottom number 100. What do you times by 25 to get 100? So 25, 50, 75, 100. We times it by 4. And then we do 6 times by 4 because we've done the bottom by 4. So you must do the top by the same, which is 24. And our percentage again is 24%. Okay. Fantastic. Now what we're going to look at is using all that knowledge that we have gained to then order fractions, decimals and percentages. So when ordering fractions, decimals and percentages, you'll need to convert all the numbers into the same format. The best way to do this is to convert them all into percentages. So for example, we know that to get a decimal to a percentage, we need to times it by 100. But we also know a quicker way is just to put that number in front of the percentage mark. So it is 16%. We then know with these, we can turn both numbers into 100. So I'm going to do the first one first. So 14 over 50. To get to that 100, how do we get from 50 to 100? Well, we times by 2. So we must do the same to 14, which is then 28. So we know that that is 28%. And then we're going to do the same with 2/5. 2 over 5. What do we times by 5 to get 100? We times it by 20. We do the same to 2, which gives us 40. And that becomes 40%. So then here, and then if we were to order them, say it's lowest to highest, we then do 0.16. So we order in the original 14 over 50 and then 2/5. So it's super important to order them in the original format. Right, now we're going to have a look at ordering fractions, decimals and percentages. First, we're going to look at smallest to largest, and then we're going to order the second set from largest to smallest. So in our first set, we've got 0.45, 39%, 24 over 50 and 47 over 100. So automatically we know that this one's done, 39%. We also know that this one is simplistic as well because we can just read two numbers after the decimal point, which then gives us 45%. And then our last one's been made nice and easy for us because it's already over 100. So it's 47%. So realistically, the only one in that first set we have to convert is this one here with a little bit of work. So we're going to do 25 over 50. equals 100. How do we get from 50 to 100? We times by 2. Do the same to 24, which gives us 48, which tells us it's 48%. Now what we have to do is we have to order in the original form. So which one is our smallest? We can have a look. We've got 45%, 39, 48, 47. So it's our 39%. So that would go first. Then we've got 0.45. So remember, staying in that original format that they were originally written in. Then we've got 47 over 100. And then 24 over 50. And that is our first set done. We're then going to have a look at our second set, but this time we're going from largest to smallest. So here we've got 0.7, and what the most common mistake that people make here is they say it's 7% because you've only got one digit. But remember, sometimes with decimals, zeros are not put in because they're not needed. But remember that that is actually 70. So it's super important to then know that that's 70%. We then have 90%. But this time we've got two fractions we need to convert, and both can be made into 100. So 8 into 10, so we go 10 to 100 times by 10. So we do the same to 8, which is 80, which then becomes 80%. And then 3 over 50, we know we times by 2. So 3 times 2 is 6. So that becomes 6%. Here we've got 70%, 80%, 90% and 6%. So our largest is our 90%. Then we've got 8 over 10, 0.7, and then 3 over 50. Okay, and that is everything to do with fractions, decimals, and percentages. Okay, what we're now going to have a look at is our second part of fractions and expressing and simplifying. You may be asked to express one number as a fraction of another. For example, write 5 days as a fraction of 20. Here you are saying there are 5 days out of 20, so the fraction would be 5 over 20. Always your highest at the bottom. Or your total. You may need to simplify or express in its lowest term, so divide both numbers until they cannot be divided anymore. So we've got 5 over 20. Now both numbers are in the 5 times table, so we can divide by 5. So 5 divided by 5 is 1. 20 divided by 5 is 4. So our smallest fraction that it is 1 over 4. Okay, now there are some ways to help you remember cool and tricky ways of, so some top tips for simplifying fractions. So rules to remember. If both numbers are even, so for example 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, exactly like that, you can divide by 2, 4 and 6. If both end in 1, 0, you can divide by 10. So for example 40 over 60 divide by 10 would then be 4 over 6. They are both even, so you can divide by 2, which then gives you 2 over 3. If both end in 2 zeros, you can divide by 100. So say you're doing 500 over 1,000, you divide by 100 by knocking off 2 zeros of each, so would be 5 over 10. Then, if both numbers are odd, you can divide by 3, 7, 9. So for example, 21 over 30 over 35. So 21 and 35 are both in the 7 times table. So we can divide by 7. 7 in 21 is 3 times. It's 5. But if they end in a 5 and a 0, you can divide by 5. So for example, 15 over 20, you can divide by 5. 15 divided by 5 is 3, and 20 divided by 5 is 4. Now, a lot of fractions with simplifying depends on your times tables. So if your times tables is something that you struggle with, I would advise you, Home Bargains, Poundland, any supermarket have the little posters with your times tables on. It might sound a little bit silly, but they are massively, massively going to help you throughout your maths, is investing in some form of times table revision to support your knowledge of your times tables, because it's going to make things like this a lot easier. Then, if the numbers are odd and even, we follow our second rule. So we divide by 3, 7, 5. So for example, say you had 14 divided by 21. We are then going to divide by 3, 7, 9. Now we can't divide 14 and 21 by 3, but we can divide it by 7. So 7 into 14 goes twice, and 7 into 21 goes 3. And we've now got our simplified fractions. So this is what we're now going to have a look at. So expressing and simplifying. There are 30 students in a class. 20 students have brown hair. What fraction of the class have brown hair? Give your answer in its simplest form. So we know we've got 20 over 30 students. And we want to get this fraction down to the smallest it can possibly be. So 20 and 30 both end in 0, so we can divide by 10, which then leaves us with 2 over 3. And we've got our fraction. Okay, question 2. Sometimes they require you to just really concentrate on what the question is asking. So a bag contains red and white sweets. There are 12 red and 8 white. What fraction of the sweets are white? But what aren't we given is the total. So the total would be 12 add 8, which is 20, and that is our bottom number. So now how many are white? 8 over 20 are white. And notice both numbers are even, so we can divide by 2. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, 20 divided by 2 is 10, and we can still go further. So 4 divided by 10 is 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So it's really important to keep simplifying until you cannot divide it anymore. And then our last one, over one day, Rebecca spends 6 hours sleeping. What fraction of the day is Rebecca awake? So what's really important is not to put 6 over 24, because 6 over 24 would be saying how long she's been asleep. We need to know how long she's been awake. So we know a day is 24 hours. And we know 6 of those hours she's asleep. So to work out how many she's awake, we do 24 take away 6, which leaves us with 18. And then our total is 24. So then our fraction is 18 over 24. And we've got even numbers again. So we divide by 2. 18 divided by 2 is 9, and 12 4. And we've got that situation where we've got an odd and an even. So we always go with rule 2. So we divide by 3, 5, 7, 9, etc. We can divide both by 3. So 3's into 9 is 3 times. How many 3's are in 12 is 4, and we've got our fractions. And they are the reduced and smallest form and simplest form of the fractions that we started with. Okay. The last thing with expression is expressing decimals and fractions. So here, what we do is we put the decimal over the amount. So our amount is 0.5 as a fraction of 20. So what we do is we put the decimal over the amount, so 0.5 over 20, and we remove the decimal by timesing by 10 or 100. So our top number requires us to times by 10. So 0.5 times 10. Then we have to do the same to the bottom. So 20 times by 10 would then leave us with 5 over 200. And then we simplify. So 5 over 200, we can divide by 5. So 5 divided by 5 is 1, 20 divided by 5 is 40. Now, if we cannot do this in our head, divide using bus stop. So 5 on the outside, 200 on the inside. 5 into 2, 0. 5 into 20 goes 4, 5 into 0, 40, and we get our answer. So 0.5 as a fraction of 20 is 1 over 40. Okay, so let's have a look at these. So 0.7 as a fraction of, so first we do 0.7 over 350. Then we do times it by 10, both numbers, so 7 over 3,500. And then what we do is we divide by 7. So 1 into 500. We've got our answer. Then we've got 0.16 as a fraction of 40. So 0.16 over 40. Now here, we have to remove the decimal twice. So we're going to have to times by 100. So it then becomes 16 over 4,000. And the easiest way to do this first is to divide by 2. So then we're left with 8 over 2,000. Divide by 2 again. So we're left with 4 over 1,000. Divide by 2 again. So then we're left with 2 over 500. And then we can divide by 2 again. 1 over 250. And they are our answers. Okay. Then our last topic that we are going to be looking at today is fractions of amounts. So when calculating a fraction of amount, you divide by the bottom and times by the top. And just remember that, divide by the bottom number, then times by the top. So for example, here we've got 1/3 of 21. So we do 21 divided by our bottom, which is 3, which leaves us with £7, and then times that 7 by 1. So £7 times 1 equals 7, and that is our answer. Okay, let's try it for some of the others. 3/4 of 100. So we do 100 divided by 4, which is 25 kilos. And then we times that 25 by 3, which gives us 75 kilos as our answer. Okay, one more. So 2/3 of 27, 27 divided by 3, which is 9 centimetres. 9 centimetres times by 2, which leaves us with 18 centimetres, and that is our answer. So our last problem question is this. A man earns £420 a week. He spends 1/5 of this on rent and 1/3 of what is left on food. How much does he spend on food? So it's about breaking down the question to understand what's being asked of you. So he spends 1/5 of this on rent. So we need to do first 1/5. So step 1, 1/5 of 420. So like we've just done, we do 5 into 420 because we're doing the division. So 5 into 4 is 0 times. 5 into 42 is 8 with 2 left over. 5 into 20 is 5, so our answer is £85. So he spends £85 of this money on rent, and then 1/3 of what is left on food. So step 2, to work out what's left, we do 420, take away 85, and the best way to do this is column method. So 0 take away 5 we cannot do, so we have to borrow. 10 take away 5 is 5. 1 take away 8 we can't do, so we have to borrow. 11 take away 8 is 3. And 3 take away 0 is 3. So 3,885, 335. So then spend 1/3 of what is left on food. We then do 1/3 of 335, which equals 3 into 335. 1 into 3 is 1, 3 into 3 is 1, 3 into 5 is once, and then we're going to end up with a decimal, guys. Put 2 left over. 20 is 6. 2 left over. And it's going to be £111 and 66 pence. Okay, brilliant. And that's it. So we have finished our lesson for today on converting fractions to decimals, percentages, ordering fractions, decimals, percentages, and expressing and simplifying fractions. Good morning, and today we are going to be looking at fractions part 2. So in today's session, the intent is looking at converting adding and subtracting fractions, adding and subtracting mixed numbers, and multiplying and dividing fractions. So the first topic that we are going to look at is adding and subtracting fractions. So it's important to remember when adding and subtracting fractions, you must make the denominators of the fractions the same always. And a good way to look at it is thinking about the Kardashians. And the Kardashians all want the same bottom. And that's a little bit like fractions. Whenever you are adding or subtracting fractions, you must make these bottom numbers the same. Now, there's two ways to do so. One is when you can turn one bottom into the other. So we can turn 2s into 4s by multiplying by 2. So we keep our bottom numbers now as 4s, and we keep the larger fraction. So we keep 1/4, okay? And then we say to ourselves, what do you multiply by 2 to get your new bottom, which is 4? So we times by 2. And then you do the same to the top. So we do 1 times 2, which is 2. And then we add the top numbers and we keep the bottom the same. Which is 3/4. And that is how we add fractions when we can turn one bottom into the other. So we're going to have a go at a couple of these. So we've got 3/7 and 2/14. So we've got 3/7 and 2/14. And we say to ourselves, can we turn the smaller one into the top? And we can by multiplying by 2. So we're going to have now both our bottom numbers as 14. We keep 2/14 as our fraction. And we times 7 by 2 to get 14, and now we do the same to 3, which gives us 6. We add the fractions together, so 6 add 2 is 8/14, and then if we can, we simplify. And then we divide by 2, and that becomes 4/7, and that is our answer. Okay, let's do one more of these. So we've got 4/5 take away 1/10. We say to ourselves, can we turn our 5s into 10s? We can. So 10 is going to be our new denominator. We keep the 1/10 as the fraction. We say to ourselves, what do we do to 5 to get to 10? So we times by 2, and then we do the same to 4, which is 8. And this time, because it's subtraction, we do 8 take away 1, which is 7. We keep our bottoms the same, which is 10. So our fraction is 7/10. Now, what happens when our bottom numbers are different? Well, if our bottom numbers are different and we can't turn one to the other, we multiply the bottoms together. So if we cannot turn one into the other, we multiply our bottoms to get the new denominator. So as we can see here, we've got 1/2 add 2/3. We cannot turn 2s into 3s, so to get our new denominator, we times these numbers together. So 2 times 3 gives us a new bottom of 6. Now, all we do to find out what we're timesing our top number by is we do the opposite. So notice 3 is your opposite to 2 here. So we're going to times 2 by 3 on this side, and then 3 by 2. So you're timesing it by the opposite. And then we do exactly the same to 1. 1 times 3 is 3, and 2 times 2 is 4. We add together and we're left with 7/6. And that is our answer. So let's have a go again for 2/7. Add 6/10. Now we cannot turn 7 into tenths. So we times our bottoms together, which gives us 70. And then we multiply them by the opposite. So 7 and 10 makes 70. 10 and 7. So 2 times 10 is 20. 6 times 7 is 42. And then we add our answers together, which leaves us with 62 over 70. We simplify the 31 over 35. We divide by 2. That is how we add our unlike denominators. So our second topic that we are going to look at now is improper and mixed number fractions. And these are when you have a fraction that is larger on the top. A mixed number has a whole number and a fraction, and in your exam you will have to convert between the two. So when we're converting from an improper fraction to a mixed number, so if the fraction has a larger number at the top, we need to see how many of the bottom number fit into it and use the remaining as a fraction. So 10/3. So we say how many 3's fit into 10, which is 3, remainder 1, and you keep the bottom number the same. So it would be 3. That's your answer here. And your 1 that's left over, you write as a fraction. It goes into it 3 whole times and 1/3 left over. So let's have a look at 9 2's. So how many 2's are in 9? So we say 2, 4, 6, 8, 4, and 1/2 left over. Okay, let's have one more. 15 quarters. So how many 4's are in 15? 4, 8, 12. So we've got 3 and 3/4 left over. Okay, well, now let's look at changing mixed numbers into improper. So what we do is we do the whole number times the bottom and then add the top. So we would do 2 times 4, which is 8. 8 add 3, which is 11. We keep the bottom number the same, so it becomes 11/4. So 2 3/4 is the same as 11/4. Now, if you did it the opposite, how many 4's are in 11? 4, 8. So it would be 2 and then 3/4 left over. So let's have a look at this one. So 4 and 1/2. So we do 4 times 2, which is 8. 8 add 1, which is 9. 9/2. And then let's do one more. So 2 and 7/8. So 2 times 8, which is 16. 16 add 7, which is 23. So 23/8 is our answer. And that is how we convert between improper and mixed number. So you will need this when you are then adding and subtracting with mixed numbers. So what I'm going to I'm going to demonstrate the first two with you here, how we follow these colour coordinated steps based on the steps that we've just learned to then add and subtract these numbers. So our first red step is to turn the fraction to an improper, what we've just done. 2 times 2 is 4, add 1 is 5/2. Add 1 and 1/3, so 1 times 3 is 3, add 1 is 4/3. Then that's our red step done. Our blue step then is to make the denominators the same. And here we have an unlike, so we need to multiply those two together. So our new bottoms are going to be 6. So we say, how do we get from 2 to 6? We times by 3, so we times by the opposite. So then we times by 2. Do this into the top. 5 times 3 is 15. 4 times 2 is 8. And then we've changed our bottoms. We then need to add or subtract. So this is an add. So we're going to do 15 add 8, which is 23/6. And then our last step is to see how many of the bottom go into the top, because we're changing it back to a mixed number. How many 6 is in 23? So 6, 12, 18 is 3, and 5/6. And that is our fraction. So our answer is 3 5/6. Okay, let's try that again now for takeaway. So we've got 2 and 2/9 take away 1 and 1/3. So 2 times 9 is 18, add 2, which is 20/9. Take away 1 and 1/3, which is 4/3. Now, when we're making the bottom numbers the same on this, we can turn 3 into 9ths. So we're going to keep the 29ths and we're going to make the new bottom 9. So how do we get from 3 to 9? We times by 3. So we do the same to 4, which is 12. And then what we do now is our green step. So we add or subtract. This one is a subtraction. So 20 take away 12 is 8 over 9. And we don't need to change it now to a mixed number because it's already a proper. So we don't need to change. It is already a mixed number. So it's already a proper fraction, sorry. Okay, so what I would like you to now have a go at are these two questions. So I'm going to give you a few minutes, have a go, follow those steps, and have a go now at questions 1 and questions 2. Okie dokie. So let's have a look at these. So we'll do our red step first with question 1. So we've got 2 and 1/3. So we're going to do 2 times 3 add 1, which is then going to leave us with 7 over 3. Add 3 times 6, which is 18, add 2, 20 over 6. So we've done our first red step. Our blue step now is to make the denominators the same. So you can turn 3 to 6s. So we're going to keep the 6. And we're going to times 3 by 2 to get 6. and 7 by 2, which is 14. So we're left with 14 over 6 and 20 over 6. Then we're going to add them together, which makes 34 over 6. And then we're going to turn to mixed number by saying how many 6s in 34. So how many 6s in 34 is 5 and 4 6s. We can then simplify to 5 and 2/3 by dividing by 2. Okay, so well done if you got that. Let's now have a go at the second question. So we've got 3 and 1/3. So 3 times 3, add 1, so 10/3. Take away 2 and 2/5. So 2 times 5 is 10. Add the 2 is 12 over 5. And here we cannot turn 3's into 5. So we're going to have to multiply our bottoms together, which gives us a new denominator of 15. So notice it's literally just adding and subtracting fractions just with the conversions in. So what do we times by 3 to get 15, which is 5? What do we times by 5 to get 15, which is 3? So notice it's just the opposite number. Then we do 10 times 5, which is 50. 12 times 3, which is 36. And then we're going to do 50 take away 36, which then leaves us with 14 over 15. And we don't need to convert because that is our answer and it's a proper fraction. So well done if you got both of those correct. So our last couple of topics now that we're going to cover are just decimal fraction calculations. So our first one is multiplying fractions. When we multiply fractions, we just multiply across the top and across the bottom. So we've got 1/2 times 1 over 4. So we do 1 times 1 over 2 times 4. So our answer is 1 over 8. Okay, so let's have a go at these three. So we've got 1/3 times 2 6. 1 times 2, 2. 3 times 6 is 18. So 2 over 18, simplify, which then gives us 1 over 9. Okay, let's try the others. So we've got 3/4 multiplied by 5/6. So 3 times 5 is 15. 4 times 6 is 24. We're then going to simplify by dividing by 3, which then gives us 5 over 8. Our answers. And then our last one, we've got 3/9 multiplied by 2/7. 3 times 2 is 6. 9/7 is, so an easy way to do it, 9 9s are 81. And then we're going to hop back 2 lots of 9s. So 72, 63. And we can divide by 3. So we've got 2 over 21. We've got our answer, 2/21. And that is how we multiply fractions. Then our last two are then dividing. So dividing fractions. So what we do is we keep the first fraction, switch them. Oh, sorry, I just realised I have missed a little section, which is multiplying fractions by whole numbers. So when we multiply fractions by whole numbers, we turn the whole number to a fraction. We then multiply across and simplify. So here we've got 3 times 1/2. So what we do is we put over 1. So put the whole over 1, and then we multiply across. 3 times 1 is 3. 1 times 2 is 2. 3 halves. So it'd be how many 2's are in 3? 1 and 1/2. Okay, let's have a go at that again. So 8 times 4 over 5. 8 over 1. 8 times 4 is 32. 1 times 5 is 5. How many 5's in 30? 6 and 2/5. Okay, spend a couple of minutes now just having a go at 3 and 4. Okay, so let's have a look at our answer for 3. So we've got 5/7 times 5, so we're going to put 5 over 1. 5 times 5 is 25. 7 times 1 is 7, so 25 sevenths. How many sevens are in 25? So 3 sevenths are 21 and 4 sevenths left over, so 3 and 4 sevenths. And then our last one, 3/4 times 12, so 12 over 1. 3 times 12 is 36 over 4. How many 4s in 36? And that would be 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36, which is 8. So 8 is just our whole number. Fantastic. And then our last section is dividing fractions. So when we're dividing fractions, you need to remember these 3 words: keep, switch, and flip. So what we are going to do is we keep the first fraction. So we've got 2/3 divided by 1/3. So we keep this, we switch this, and then we flip this one. So we keep 2/3, we switch the divide to a multiply, and we flip the last fraction. So 2 times 3 is 6, 3 times 1 is 3. 6/3, how many 3s in 6? And our answer is 2. So we keep, we switch, we flip. Okay, let's have a look at number 2. So 1/2 divided by 2/5. So we keep 1/2, we switch to multiply, and then we flip the last. So 1 times 5 is 5, 2 times 2 is 4, 5 over 4 is 1 1/4. Okay, have a now go at questions 3 and questions 4. Okay, so let's have a look at these. So we're going to keep 2/8, we're going to switch to multiply, and we're going to flip the last one. So 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 1 is 8, so 8 over 8, or 1, a whole. And then our last one, 5/7, we're going to keep that. We're going to switch the divide to multiply, and we're going to flip 4 over 3. So 5 times 4 is 20, over 7 times 3 is 21. And we don't need to change because it's proper fraction. Okay, guys, so that is fractions part 2. So now you have covered everything in fractions, such as converting, ordering, comparing, adding, subtracting, improper mixed numbers, fractions to decimals and percentages, and multiplying and dividing fractions. So now all that's need to do is to complete the fractions part 2 worksheet and the mini fractions assessment that's been given.